Tim Sika, hello.
Hi, Kim. Happy Friday to you.
Hi, happy Friday to you. Is it going to be a
Thank you.
good movie weekend or a bad movie weekend?
Well, a good movie, a good movie, a
A
good
good
movie
movie weekend.
weekend. Yeah,
Okay.
actually, I didn't want to tip my hand, but I've liked, and I'm going to recommend, I think, five of the six movies that we're going to
Oh,
hopefully have time to
all
talk
right.
about. So,
That's
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
positive.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
well, let's jump right into it because your first movie is called Ezra.
Yeah, Ezra. We're going to begin and end this movie segment this week with good movies, but also movies that are at their core kind of sad. Mm.
Hmm.
Anyway, so the first one is Ezra, and in Ezra, Bobby Cannavale, is he in the picture there? Yeah, I don't know. Is that the right one? Yeah, it is. That is the right poster.
Okay.
Anyway, oh yeah, it looks like De Niro on the bottom. Yeah, I think that's Cannavale on the left. Anyway, he gives a terrific performance. He plays a stand-up comedian who in real life he's like this hothead. He's prone to anger really quickly. He's easily set off. He's got a lot of issues, right? Robert
Hmm.
De Niro plays his dad, and the dramatic conflict here is that Cannavale, along with his ex-wife, who's played by Rose Byrne, is struggling to care for and co-parent their autistic son.
Mm.
And this is an emotional. And oh, by the way, the boy who plays the titular Ezra, he's in the poster there on the right. His
Hmm.
name is William Fitzgerald, and he actually has autism.
Oh, wow.
And this is his film debut, and he's very good here. So, the fact that they cast an autistic child to
Hmm.
play this part, lends an aura of verisimilitude to the movie that I don't think it otherwise would have. But yeah, this is an emotional roller coaster ride of a movie, really, because it not only depicts what it's like to be parenting an autistic child. The screenwriter Tony Spiridakis based his screenplay on his own relationship with his own autistic son and raising that son in a similar situation where he was divorced from his wife, but they were both co-parenting this child. It not only depicts what it's like to be raising a child with autism, but it raises questions like, what's the best way to do this, and how do we know that what we're doing is the right thing to be doing for our kid, and do we try to fix the autism, or do we embrace it fully?
Hmm.
Because the divorced parents in this particular story, Bobby Cannavale and Rose Byrne, they have different and sometimes opposing notions as to the best way in dealing with their autistic son, whom they both obviously unequivocally, unconditionally, and dearly love. So that's so it's
I think
not
that's
only.
I think that's
Yeah,
kind of a normal parent struggle.
yeah.
Like we
Well,
even in this house,
it
like sometimes we approach things a little differently and we have to sit down and go, okay, someone thinks this is more of an egregious offense, someone thinks this is the good punishment, someone thinks this is too strict,
Right.
some
Well,
whatever, you
that
know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the relatable part of this. But
Mhm.
when you add autism, it kind of, I don't want to say illuminates. What's the word?
Well, sure.
It really shines a
Yeah.
different light
Mhm.
on what you just said.
Yeah.
So it's not only a story about autism per se, but it's also a solid family drama too, and that's why I think. This movie is going to go over well with viewers. Rainn Wilson is in this. He plays Cannavale's pal. Whoopi Goldberg is in this too. She plays Cannavale's agent who wrangles him an audition to appear on Jimmy Kimmel Live because he's a
Mhm.
stand-up comic. I like the film enormously, and I really recommend it. Oh, and Kim, remember in the final weeks of KGO when at the end of Pat Thurston's movie segment, John Rothman and Karen Reed and everybody in the studio would come on the air with a bunch of dad jokes. We're
Oh,
all trying to
absolutely.
outdo each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this movie has a really good dad joke, and it's told by Ezra when he's like trying to mimic his stand-up comic dad,
Yeah.
and the joke is where do horses go when they're sick?
I don't know.
The hospital.
Ah, yes.
Anyway, Ezra is a
Yeah.
nice film, and I
Yeah.
recommend it. Yeah.
All right. It's
Yeah.
interesting because I heard Michael Snyder review this movie on Mark Thompson's show a few minutes ago, and
Oh
he
yeah.
found it annoying. He said he could hardly barely
Ooh,
stand it.
really?
He
Wow,
found
that's
the
interesting.
yeah, he said it was really really annoying and he didn't get the premise.
Really, that's interesting. Well, I could see where somebody would be annoyed by the behavior of
Mhm.
the autistic kid. I mean, it would drive. I, man, God bless those parents that
Mhm.
can deal with that. But I, I could see, I could see if somebody would be annoyed by that kind of behavior because it's relentless,
Yeah.
and it never stops. And you know what they said the autism. I think yeah, autism. I think they say this in the movie comes from the Greek, and it means in your own world.
Yeah.
So you know how do you do that? How do you bring the child out? How do you enter that world that's so private? I could
Mhm.
see where somebody would find that annoying, but
Yeah.
I'll have to talk to Michael about that, you know,
But you
off
loved
mic.
it.
You know,
Okay, very
I
good.
really really liked it. I thought it was very very touching. Yeah, yeah.
Summer camp.
Summer camp, a comedy about old people. That's what summer camp. Look at that poster. In this case, it's three women of a certain age who, as kids, bonded as best friends in summer camp, but you know, who've drifted away from each other as life, you know,
Life does.
often
Yep.
intervenes. Yeah,
Mhm.
and so, but they still remain close from a distance. But now there's going to be a 50-year reunion party at Camp Pinnacle. That's the summer camp where these ladies first befriended each other. So they all converge at this 50th anniversary reunion, right? They get together to kind of recharge and remember and reinvigorate their friendship bond. And who knows, there may be some romance in the
Ooh,
cards,
ooh la
right? For
la.
these
Okay.
ladies of an age, you know, right around the corner. God. Okay, so summer camp is in the vein in the tradition of those similar type movies like Book Club. Did you ever see Book Club or Book
I
Club The Next Chapter?
I like the book club one better than the book club two.
So did I. So did I.
Yeah.
80 for Brady, you know.
Mhm. I
And
did
these
see that even though you didn't recommend it, I did watch it.
well, yeah, I knew you were gonna. But anyway, these movies are basically designed for an older crowd in their
Yeah.
twilight years. You know, underscoring notions like it's never too late, age is just a number. No matter
Mhm.
what your age, romance may still be waiting for you right around the corner. Those kind of sentiments.
Which is
And
kind of true. I mean, you hear
well,
stories of
yeah,
people in their 80s getting married, right? I mean, it
yeah,
happens.
and that's the template that this
Mhm.
summer camp follows. And I don't think I was as huge a fan of the book club movies, although I did think the first one was the best. But the next chapter was 80 for Brady. Oh God, because I felt those movies. I mean, I got what they were going after, but they were also lazy movies. I mean, they could have stood to be a little more, I don't know, a little more skillful, a little more sophisticated. I mean, all the
Mhm.
elderly people I know are very smart and knowledgeable and wise and sophisticated. I thought those films lacked any sense of sophistication and wit, and they were just pandering, like, oh, we'll give the old people these goofy, silly, wish fulfillment films in a dopey way because at least they'll have these to watch. We'll entertain them anyway. But in my opinion, they were kind of condescending. And each of the films, each one got worser than the ones that came before. And Summer Camp is the worst of
Oh,
all. And I'll tell you what, it's sloppily made. It's slapdash, like seemingly thrown together, and then just thrown out there to the art marketplace. There's no depth here. It's not particularly funny. The Oscar-winning actresses Diane Keaton and Kathy Bates and the great Alfre Woodard they're all in this, and the wonderful Beverly D'Angelo, who I love. She's so funny. They seem to me very self-conscious in the way they're delivering their lines, and you wonder if they're wondering to themselves as they do their best to make this dopey movie really funny. You wonder if they're thinking, "How the hell did I agree to
yeah.
appear in this movie?"
And
It's
that's
not.
what I'm at. Want to wonder is why would these really successful actresses want to put something like this as an
Yeah.
end cap to a career? Like, why
Well,
now? Do they need the money? What's
well,
happening?
it could be that they met their price, right? Their
Mm-hmm.
agents probably got what they were worth,
Yeah.
and also because I mean, I think for women over 40 in Hollywood to get any work at all, I think if it's offered, I think they're going to take it, and why
Mm.
not? I mean, but see, I'm a critic, so I got to be critical. And I suppose the movie's not bad. It's kind of breezy. It's kind of mindless. It may be, I thought it was. This is terrible because I saw it in the theater, but it was something. I mean, it's something to stare at while you're scrolling on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Although you really shouldn't do that in the theater while the movie's playing. The screenplay, I did like the fact that the screenplay kind of poked fun a little bit at the self-help industry, because Kathy Bates plays one of the besties, and she plays the successful best-selling self-help author who, of course, falls short of practicing what she preaches.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this movie will get some elderly people to kind of reevaluate their lives and to recommit to living more fully. But for me, it was it was platitudinous and on the nose and silly. And I think the over 60 movie going demographic deserves way better than summer camp.
Well, Walter
But
says, I liked Grumpy Old Men, he says. That was a good one. I also,
yeah, I like that too.
Cocoon. Cocoon
Yeah.
was good.
Cocoon was
Mm-hmm.
very good. Yeah, Cocoon was a really good movie. But this is not in that
No.
same quality league.
Thumbs
I
down to
love all
summer
those
camp.
women. I loved
Mm-mm.
all the women in this movie. I followed their careers religiously. I think they're all brilliant actresses. But, I guess you just got to go where the work is. I don't know. Yeah, I'm a
Well,
critic, so I got
from
to be critical.
ridiculous comedy that's not really funny to this, even
Oh
even the movie poster
my
freaks me out.
God.
Like
Well,
with it looks like blood is flying. Like ew.
yeah. Here's a hell of a horror movie for fans of the Jason, Friday the 13th, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm
Mm,
Street, slasher, killer, stalker, gross out monster genre film. It's interesting, Kim, because this movie premiered at the Sundance Film Festival. And that kind of piqued my interest. I'm going,
mhm.
oh, okay, Sundance,
Sure.
moving a little towards art.
Yeah,
And
that
what
means
it
it's kind of that
is,
means it's artsy, right? That it
it
means
is, it is artsy, and what it
okay.
is, well, it's being described as an ambient horror movie, meaning, well, ambient's like this. Well, ambient's an adjective, and it's used to describe an aspect of the environment that completely like surrounds you, but in a kind of mellow background, quiet kind of way. It's like when you're in a restaurant and there's music in the
Hmm.
background. That's considered ambient,
Right.
okay? And that's this movie. That describes the style of this movie, which is really simply a slasher stalker film. There's a
Mhm.
creature, a monster that emerges from the dead, and then targets this group of teenagers camping in the wilderness, and then just ticks them off one by one in like super, super horrific ways. That's it. That's the plot. But the difference here is that aside from the no music score, there's not an ounce of music except for the ambient music and the ambient sounds, because most of this takes place in the wilderness. But there's the forest sounds of crickets chirping, leaves crunching, twigs snapping. The difference is that the events of the film are observed largely from the killer's perspective. And
Interesting.
everything about this movie, the build-ups to the killings, which are appallingly
Mm,
grotesque, graphic, gross, grisly, gory, are slow and steady. We watch
mm,
this monster from behind slowly saunter towards his next victim, and of course they don't know he's zeroing in on
right.
them, right? I mean, we know what's about to happen, but the fact that it's taking so long for the killer to traverse from one place to the next
Right.
really puts the viewer through this emotional ringer. Now some might find this boring, but to me this approach only created more dread, more fear, and more like you just really, you're watching this movie, you want to friggin' scream at the screen and go, do it already. I can't stand this.
Oh.
Do it already. And then comes the unsuspecting killing. So in my mind, this is a real kick-ass of a horror film. The concept is very simple, but at the same time, it's kind of brilliant. The direction by Chris Nash deserves to be singled out here. For one, a lot of the slayings take place in broad daylight too, which is interesting and different. Uh, After I saw it, Kim, or rather after I took it all in, but first I reminded myself that I needed to breathe because this movie was something else. But second, I immediately texted a friend who I just know would love this movie. It's so in his movie wheelhouse. I texted this friend and I said, you got to go see this movie In a Violent Nature. It's a formal, this is how I described it as a formal exercise in horror excruciation. That's how I would describe this movie in one word: excruciating. The way in which this movie elongates time before the inevitable body evisceration, it's really something. The killings, the murders, they're almost like these ritualistic dismemberments. And think pacing. There's one killing that lasts maybe 6 or 7 minutes and it's all in detail. All of this, it's a feast for gorehounds. The killings get more and more ghastly and grisly as the story progresses. Halfway through, you get the sneaking suspicion that your interest is only going to be maintained if the exponential increase of gruesomeness of the subsequent killings is maintained, and it is, and you're not going to be disappointed if you're a gorehound. So, in summation, here, what am I saying? I think this is a horror film unlike any horror film you've ever seen. It takes the stalker slasher genre in directions that we're not used to, and it presences that slasher genre cliche by, at the same time, surprisingly and artfully, avoiding that cliche. It's a horror movie that's practically a nature documentary and an art film for gorehounds. And even when this movie lets up, it doesn't ever really let up. So if you're in the mood or you're a fan, I mean, but I'm telling you,
it's a thumbs down for me. I can't stand that kind of stuff.
But Nikki, I'm telling you,
Nikki would like it, maybe.
They made this movie for Nikki. Nikki, if you're listening, you have to see In a Violent Nature. Really, she's got to see it. I think if I had to bet money on it, I'd say she would love this movie.
Here's the question, and I think, is it about perspective? Because movies like the Blair Witch Project kind of changed horror movies because of the perspective from which it was filmed. And as you mentioned earlier with this movie, the sound, using the sound, and instead of, and I think in Blair Witch they use shaky visuals to make it more realistic. But in the perspective, this movie has a different, line of sight and sound as well. Would you compare it in that way?
Well, the Blair Witch Project was more that started the found footage genre, which is a little different than this. This is more. This is all happening in real time, and you're always from. It's like you're following the killer. You're behind the killer.
Right.
So in a way, it's different in that way,
right?
But this one is more. Well, the Blair Witch was actually kind of realistic too in the way they shot it and everything. But they're different films. But and I can't honestly. Well, I don't know. This one may start a whole new phase. I don't know. I just really, the killings in this movie, I think they will even gross out the gorehound. They're so shocking. What they do, and I'm not even going to try to describe them. Okay. No.
Well, I think the movie poster tells us a lot.
Yeah, there you go. That's one of the many tools this guy uses to end his victims. These poor kids. I mean, they were so unsuspecting. They weren't doing anything bad. Well, actually, they do. No, actually, they do kind of like set it off, but I won't say how. Yeah.
Can we talk about In Robot Dreams?
Robot Dreams, yeah. This is an animated film. It's Robot Dreams, not In Robot Dreams. Yeah, Robot Dreams. Anyway, this is an animated film for everybody. Robot Dreams it's a comedy with tragic elements in it. It's also a French-Spanish co-production. It's written and directed by Spanish filmmaker Pablo Berger. And I learned this morning that it's based on a 2007 comic strip I didn't know. And very simply, it's about the friendship between a dog, there he is, a dog and a robot in New York City in 1984. That's the premise. And this was one of the very best films of last year. It's getting a delayed release. I have no idea why. Maybe they're just waiting for summer. And it was one of the 5 of of this year's Oscar-nominated animated movies that was vying for the Best Animated Feature Oscar. In any other year, it would have been a delight to see it win, but the competition was really fierce this year. I mean, the winner was the Boy and the Heron, which is this animation masterpiece, and then the other nominees were, I think, it was Pixar's Elemental, Disney's Nimona, and Marvel's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And Robot Dreams stylistically would have, and obviously did, get engulfed in those other arguably more ambitious movies. It just got lost. But Robot Dreams is really, really special. It's a lovely story about friendship and attachment in relationships, particularly. And it explores this notion of what does it really mean to love someone or something. It's absolutely charming. It's sweet. It's poignant. It's funny. It's sad, and ultimately touching. And, Kim, all these adjectives I'm using here to describe this wonderful movie are just my attempts to attest to what I saw as the purity of this film. There's nothing emotionally manipulative or calculated about this movie. Its emotion is derived purely from the presentation of what the characters are going through and what is arising naturally and organically from its plot episodes and development. So it's very pure in that sense, very real, and it's exceptional in those ways. And for the film's 1 hour and 42-minute runtime, not one single word of dialogue is spoken. So it's very cinematic. Speaking of purity, in the purest sense, its story, in other words, is conveyed solely through its visual images. That's pretty much Robot Dreams. It's a wonderful, wonderful movie that both kids and adults will love. It's very sophisticated, and it doesn't play down to kids. But I think kids are going to love this movie. I loved it. It was such a surprise. I had heard good things about it, but I would give this movie 4 stars out of 4 stars easily. Yeah.
All right. I'm putting it on my list. This is excellent.
Okay.
Let's go to Young Woman and the Sea.
Young Woman and the Sea. Aquatic dramas all of a sudden seem to be in vogue in movies. Aquatic dramas based on history, based on real events. There was last year we had George Clooney's The Boys in the Boat. That was about the rowing team. Yeah, that was a good movie. And then we had the Academy nominated Naiad, which was about Diana Naiad's multiple attempts to swim the Straits of Florida. And now we have Young Woman in the Sea, which is one of the most awful of movie titles. It's like calling Gone with the Wind Southern Girl on a Plantation. It's like, I just think it's a dumb title. But anyway, we'll get to anyway. It's a sports drama, and it's based on a true story and the life of Trudy Ederle. She was an American competitive swimmer who became the first woman to successfully swim across the English Channel. And Daisy Ridley, who played Rey in all those Star Wars movies, she plays Trudy Ederle in this movie. And this is in a way, and because, again, I'm a so-called critic, I have to say this if I'm going to live with myself. And what I'm going to say is by no means a cavalier dismissal of this movie, but Young Woman in the Sea is a kind of lesser Naiad in that it's more about following all the movie sports drama genre rules that Hollywood follows when they attempt to tell stories like this. It's basically about a handicapped woman who overcomes all odds to accomplish something that's never been done before. And in this particular case, it's also a triumph over sexism and patriarchy, because she lived at a time, and this happened in the 1920s, when women were considered still, they had just won the vote, but they were still considered second-class citizens. They didn't have the strength that men had. Their place was in the kitchen and in the home. But so that, I like that about this movie. But it's the movie is one melodramatic cliche piled upon another cliche, but for what it is, it's perfectly fine. It does the job. It gets the job done. There's rooting interest in the main character. You really, I was rooting for this woman, even though I knew how it was going to end, because, she did successfully swim the English Channel. You want her to succeed, despite the fact that, as a critic, you've seen the mechanics behind the making of this type of movie all too often. everything is here and used to gin up your ultimate emotional reactions to the story. There's the overabundance of the propulsive and inspirational music score. There's the speechifying. I mean, oh God, there's the factual finessing for dramatic purposes. There's all of that. But, at one point, I cried uncle. I just said, hey,
No.
I got to recommend this movie. And that's because the film, in the end, delivers what it sets out to deliver. It's got this pull out the stopper, let's have a whopper emotional finale.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is the other thing, too. What a movie for young girls this is. I've said this before. I wish I could come up with something new to say, but if I had a daughter, even after as a critic seeing this movie and having my reservations, I would not hesitate to take my young daughter to see this, because I think young girls going to see this movie will be deeply inspired by it. So,
Okay.
there's Young Woman in the Sea, ultimately, not irrevocably hurt by that title. But you know what? I did talk about foot and mouth. I just realized, because I have my computer screen up here, I just realized that this was based on the book of the same name. That's why they kept the title for the movie. Okay.
Okay.
But they should
Okay.
have come up with a better movie title. I'm going to
Yeah.
stand by that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, good movie for young girls.
Young
Boys
girls.
will
All
like
right.
it too because it's very sporty, but the focus really here is on a female heroine, and she indeed is a heroine because she made history. And
Okay.
she died. There's an epilogue in the movie where she was with us until 2003, and she lived to be 98 years
Oh
old.
my.
Trudy Everly did. Yeah,
That's
yeah. So,
cool.
yeah.
Next one, The Dead Don't Hurt. Looks like a Western.
A Western, yeah.
Yeah.
Actor Viggo Mortensen. He does the Orson Welles thing here with The Dead Don't Hurt. Only he did a one up on the Citizen Kane author. He not only wrote, starred in, produced, and directed this movie, he also composed the score. Well, maybe a two or three up on Welles, because Welles co-wrote Kane and he didn't produce anyway. Yeah, this, you got this right. It's a Western, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a near great Western in my opinion. It hit me smack dab in my movie sweet spot. This movie
Okay.
did. It's a drama, a tragedy, and like Ezra, it's sad. It's also beautiful though. Uh, it's just beautiful. It's one of those sad movies that has a melancholic tone that, sometimes it's good when you're watching a movie to feel sad. I remember Hitchcock once was talking about, he claimed that he made his movies mostly for women, and he said you never heard women when they would go to a movie, they'd come out of the movie and they would tell their friends, I had a good cry. What is that? You had a good cry. Well,
Yeah.
that kind of, you can kind of have a good cry after you see this movie. So it's a Western. It's more than a Western, though, because it's a love story, too, that just happens to have a Western backdrop. It's the
Mm-hmm.
1860s in Nevada, and Mortensen plays this Danish-American immigrant who falls in love with this fiercely independent French-Canadian woman, played by Vicky Krieps. And when he's called to fight on the Union side of the Civil War, they're separated. And while separated, well, let's just say things happen in the interim to both of them that change and could possibly threaten what's passed between them. And yeah, there's no way of getting around it. This is a beautiful lyrical movie. Again, tragic, but it also has its lighter moments. The acting is great with its wide open vistas and 19th century setting. It boasts the look of a classic Western and the feel of a classic Western, but it's not your usual Western movie in that it clearly breaks with some of the conventional archetypes that have been used to depict female roles in these kinds of movies, particularly in Westerns. So that's just one interesting aspect to this movie. In a way, this movie is the woman's story. She's incredible. This character that Mortensen has written for this actress, but there are so many other reasons to love this movie. It might be the first Western, quote unquote, Western that will appeal to both men and women, because
Mm.
I think everything moviegoers love about Westerns is present here. But what I think I love the most about the way this story was told and the way Mortensen chose to tell it, it unfolds and its plot points revealed all this is done through flashback, which now having seen the movie twice is still making me think not only about the narrative per se, but the thematic import of the events and the characters and their motivations. Because you're watching this movie and you're going, okay, yeah, here he is with his son. But then at some point, because of where you're taken in the flashbacks, you go, well, is that really his son? Anyway, I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to say any more about that because it would involve spoilers. There's some really surprising developments in the story that make you think in different ways and rethink what it is you just saw. So it's smart that way too. And you remain especially engaged as a result because you don't have to strive to pay attention. You just have to watch the movie. But so yeah, I'm not a big Western fan. I love all the classic Westerns like Shane and High Noon and The Searchers. I love those, but that's because those Westerns kind of transcend their backdrop to tell universal stories. I think this one does too, and it does it in different ways. And yeah, I just love The Dead Don't Hurt. I highly recommend it. It's just a great story, and it's so skillfully told by Viggo Mortensen. He did everything on this movie. He produced it, he wrote it, he starred in it, he directed it, and he wrote the score. I mean, come on. Just that alone, he deserves some kudos.
No, you make me want to see it. Absolutely.
Oh, it's a beautiful, Kim, it's a beautiful love story. I think you'll totally love the love story.
Flashbacks can confuse me a little bit. When it's a movie about flashbacks, if there's too many,
yeah,
I kind of get confused as what's happening versus now versus in the past.
Exactly.
Like,
well, I
keep track of it all. Are the same characters here?
Yeah. Well, the film's getting pretty good reviews, but I read one in particular where they said the same thing that you did. They said, well, I wish, he would have changed his look a little bit more so we would have known that. But it's still, again, I saw it twice, and everything that's done and everything, the way it's done, it's all done deliberately and it all makes sense. It's just, it's a smart movie. And sometimes smart movies do those things to us.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Mama de Three Boys says, my husband loves Westerns. And I would say, Mama, this is one you can maybe encourage him to watch because Tim says like it too, so this is good.
yeah Western for husband and wives to watch together. Yes.
Walter
although it's in theaters.
He says my favorite Western is My Name Is Nobody, which is an old Henry Fonda Terrence Hill movie.
That's a terrific that's a terrific story. Yep.
All right, we'll review it. The first one you reviewed today was Ezra. You called Ezra you liked it enormously. You said it is a drama and it's heartwarming, but you say you really enjoyed that movie and you recommend it.
Yes.
Not the case with Summer Camp. Summer Camp, you
Sorry,
said,
ladies, yeah.
And I quote, the worst is what you said.
Pretty much, that sums it up,
A violent nature, a kick-ass horror movie, you said, and it's excruciating in the way it elongates time before you get to the gore. Robot Dreams, you loved it. No words in this movie, but you said it's a special story about friendship and attachment. You called it charming and sweet.
Yes.
Young Woman and the Sea. You like this movie. You said it's a sports drama. It's a little formulaic, but you recommend it especially for the younger women or the young girls.
Yes.
And then The Dead Don't Hurt, which you've convinced me I need to take my husband to see this one. It's a Western romance. Viggo wrote, starred, directed, and you said he did the score too?
Yeah, he did everything.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know how he did it, but he did it, and he did it well. Yeah.
You called it a beautiful lyrical movie.
Yeah.
And there we have it. Tim Sika, you have succeeded again.
I think I went way over my time this week.
No, it's very good. Thank you so much.